Welcome everybody to the Joint Tourism and Advisory and Economic and Development and Planning Advisory Committee meeting for December the 15th. Welcome to everybody. I'd like to call this meeting to order, and I would also ask for a declaration of any interest as it relates to the agenda that's ahead of us. Seeing none, let's move to number 3, reports. And I believe, is it Stephanie?
Yes.
Please proceed, Stephanie. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for having me here today. So I'm just here to provide a on the project. I know many of you have heard the updates before, so please feel free, if I've missed anything that you thought was important that I have said previously, please feel free to add it and ask any questions that you think I may have missed. So to date, we have been doing really well with our service, and it's been doing really well, and we've been receiving a lot of feedback that's been positive, but also at sometimes we've received some constructive feedback. So over the last few weeks and months, so we started our service in September, and we've been speaking to the riders every single time they get on the bus, or every single time somebody calls us and tells us, what are the connections? Tell me the schedule, and then something's not working. We've been writing all that feedback down, and we've made schedule adjustments based on that feedback. We made more connections for individuals to connect into Orangeville or to Owen Sound, going either way along Highway 10. We made more connections for individuals who live in Flesherton, Hanover, Durham, and Walkerton to connect into Grey Road, Highway 10, more often, so that way they can travel up to Owen Sound or go down to Orangeville, whichever way that they'd like to travel. And we tried to make more connections meaningful between Meaford and the town of Blue Mountains as well. So that way, if anybody wanted to travel back and forth there, the connections are greater. We do know that we are missing our evening shift worker market, and unfortunately that's just, I think, going to be a matter of time before we are able to cover some more of our evening shifts, but I think we'll get there because I know that it's needed, and there's a lot of employers that could benefit from having an evening bus that goes maybe closer to 10 o'clock at night and then comes back first thing in the morning to capture that shift worker in the evening. So we are looking at adding that in, but that would be a future development. Additionally, so we changed the schedules on December 7th, if I didn't say that already, so that was last Monday. So we're hoping to see that the ridership will increase as a result of those changes. The last few days, and including today, hence why I'm dressed a little more casually, I'm going out in the streets and in the community, handing out flyers. So on Sunday, myself and Adam from Driver's Seat, we went out and we handed out flyers in Blue Mountains at the resort there, and we got to chat with a couple of people. We headed into Thornbury and into Meaford. And then yesterday we did Orangeville, Shelburne, Dundalk, Flesherton, and Markdale. And then today I'm doing Owen Sound and up the peninsula to Wiarton. So, and Friday I'll be doing Grey Road 4. So we're hoping that by hitting up all of those places, it will give us an opportunity to do some more word of mouth, get flyers into the hands of the people that don't know about the service yet, or if they do, it gives them something tangible that they can show to other people. And the feedback was great. We chatted with lots and lots of individuals of all different kinds and lifestyles, and everybody, the resounding was, wow, it's about time. Thank you so much for doing this. We're so glad that there's transit and that we can get to different places. So for me, it's been a very positive experience. And we learned a lot. We learned a lot of different places that we could be advertising and putting up flyers that are not necessarily traditional, but places that are beneficial. So it's been great. Some advances to our system that will be coming in 2021 is we received feedback that cash payments were needed. And so what we've been working on is it's kind of like a coupon code system. So typically a person would purchase a ticket and they'd be able to use that ticket to get on the bus with that ticket. So what we're doing instead, because we ask that you book your ticket in advance, is we're going to provide a unique number on that ticket that the individual would just enter that information online, and it would zero out the need to pay anything online. So it's essentially the exact same as using a credit card or a debit card online. This will just allow individuals to buy a ticket with cash and then use that code to purchase their ticket online. Additionally, we are now able to offer wheelchair accessible rides. So if individuals need that service, we can offer that. So if they head to our website, they can access that information and they can call driver's seat directly or email them, and they will make sure that all of the details are taken down and that we can book their seat for them. We just ask that it's 2 days in advance, just so that way we have the right size vehicle. So depending on the individual's needs, their mobility device is often different shapes and sizes, and we just want to make sure that we send the right vehicle to capture the individual's needs. I think I saw a question down here. Oh, sorry, that was somebody else. Okay, and also to date, I can share a link with Tara, and I know that this was asked at council the other day, so perhaps Tara could share the same link with this group, which it provides our ridership stats to date. So you're able to see how we've been building and what we've been able to do so far. Important statistics to note about the stats is that we started charging fees November 1st. So you'll see, obviously, September, October, some areas, the uptake in the service was greater, and then once we implemented a fee, that some of it dropped off, but some areas it didn't drop off, and we have seen it actually increase. And I am getting requests to expand service to 7 days a week or add in evenings or additional weekends. So the interest is there from the community as a whole, so it's been a really positive project so far. Is there any questions?
Thanks, Stephanie. Questions for Stephanie, and before I pass the chair over to Andrew?
And Savannah or Kim, if I missed anything, please feel free to add. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks very much for the update, Stephanie. And Andrew, we see you live and well, and you're now connected, so I'll pass it over to you as chair.
Oh, thank you, Brian. Sorry, everyone. I was having a link issue. Thanks, Stephanie, for that great report. Without any other questions, we'll move on to 3B, Giraffe Living on Main Street Student Report by Scott Taylor.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Chair and members of the Joint Committee. So some of you would have heard an update on this about a month ago, but just for those that haven't, I'll give a quick synopsis. This was a project done by University of Toronto Master's Planning students alongside Steve Furness in Economic Development and myself, to look at our downtowns across Grey County, and more specifically, they were looking at sort of the shape of the main streets of our downtowns, as well as whether or not there are any further opportunities for housing. They were supposed to look at the official plans and zoning policies throughout the county, as well as our community improvement plans, both those that are in place now and the draft community improvement plans that municipalities are starting to put in place. So they had a tall order in terms of reviewing all 9 member municipalities and county policies in that regard. But we're pleased to say now that we have the final report, they've done an excellent job, and we're just going to go over some of the highlights very quickly for you. One of the key components of this project, aside from reviewing the policy documents and the community improvement plans, was to actually interview stakeholders. And between county staff and municipal staff, we gave them a large list of stakeholders, some from every municipality, of course, including municipal staff at the economic development, planning, and CAO levels in some cases. We gave them lists of downtown landowners and landlords in that regard that might own commercial and or residential buildings, whom they could interview to get the feeling on the ground in that regard. And they were really looking at the efficacy of some of our policies in that regard. So the feedback we got, they did over 30 interviews. The feedback we got was fantastic, and they were able to get some people from every municipality. Obviously, some municipalities and some people chose to be more involved in the interviews than others, but certainly we really do appreciate the input that everyone gave to this study. Not surprising, one of their findings was that our downtowns need to, moving forward, contain a mix of commercial and residential spaces. And as much as some of those spaces might be enticing to look at residential infill projects, we do still want to maintain, of course, the commercial basis of our downtown, while also providing a good base for future residential needs. With respect to this community improvement plans in specific, they found that these documents need to be living documents, and municipalities and the county with our template need to consider formal reviews and updates over time. At the municipal level, they recommended a prioritization of funding, and then these priorities could also evolve over time. So it could be that for your first few years, maybe affordable housing is one of the main incentives that you'd like to promote. But if for example, you get more affordable housing, maybe there's other initiatives that you'd like to promote in later years. They recommended that municipalities shouldn't conduct impact audits of their community improvement plans. So this would really be to look at projects, both real and hypothetical, to see what the impact could be towards helping get that project off the ground, what the financial impact could be in that regard. They also recommended that municipalities and the County of Grey work with business improvement associations, downtown associations, and maybe even the Business Enterprise Center to actively promote the community improvement plans. They did find that in some municipalities there was little awareness, and in some cases that could be due to the fact that municipalities are just getting their plans off the ground now. But certainly we can always do better to get word out there. They also recommended that between Grey and our member municipalities, we offer wraparound supports to aid those applying for incentives. I know we've heard in the past from others that there's certain folks and certain trades that might be more accustomed to filling out funding applications, and others that see it as completely painful and a creative writing exercise they'd like to forget. So they recommended that staff either at the municipal or county level could consider offering support with respect to helping fill out those applications. And I know staff at the county and municipal levels have tried to make sure those applications are as pain-free as possible, but that might not be entirely the case with some applicants' feedback. And then they also recommended that municipalities could consider offering small loans with respect to partial costs of a project, particularly if there's upfront costs that are needed in that regard. With respect to the housing aspects, it was resounding that all 9 of our CIPs should consider including funding for affordable and attainable housing in that regard. They recommended that municipalities consider promoting dormitory style housing as a way to better house our local labor force. They recommended that municipalities consider undertaking a survey of commercial properties on their main streets and throughout their municipality to see whether in some cases we may be over or undersupplied with respect to our commercial needs. One of the things that this might lead to is it might lead to rationale for conversion of some commercial properties to residential, or it might lead us to the direction that no, we really need to protect that ground floor commercial, and we shouldn't be considering further conversions in that regard. They recommended that municipalities track vacancy rates, both in the commercial and the residential properties in that regard. From a more pure planning perspective, they recommended that municipalities consider downtown transition zones. So if you picture the fringes of the downtowns in your communities, those areas sort of after some of the commercial buildings are starting to peter out, might be key areas for residential intensification. And it might be something that we need some special policies on in that regard. They also recommended if we are going to look at the conversion of commercial spaces, maybe there be criteria included in municipal planning documents in that regard that would guide both applicants and councils as to when those conversions could be considered. And finally, from a planning perspective, they recommended that we look at our parking standards in our zoning bylaws, and particularly the downtown parking standards for both commercial and residential uses. In some cases, these parking standards are barriers to seeing either commercial tenants or residential infill projects in that regard. And they also noted that in some cases where there might be large downtown commercial lots that are rarely ever full, maybe that's an opportunity to look at using some of that municipal land in the future for a small attainable housing development opportunity. So that's a key piece of input. With respect to downtown revitalization, they also recommended that municipalities might consider urban design guidelines to look for a consistent form and feel and sort of marketing of their downtown. We need to look at, as I said, primarily maintaining that commercial street wall, so the ground floor commercial in our downtowns. And they also had some interesting recommendations on modifying the vacant property tax rebate program. And it might be that this program is temporarily put on hold until municipalities can study it further. Or it might be that in some municipalities, they look at doing away with this, this rebate program. So that's sort of what I had on this project. Steve Furness, I'm not sure if you have anything further to add here.
No, you did a great summary, Scott. They were a pleasure to work with. I find it may be interesting for everyone to go and read more specifically the comments from the private sector because they are varied in that report. And I do think an area of further study is the incentive, the commercial tax rebate. There is a lot of debate on that, and there is differing views of that. I think whenever we offer a rebate and there's a grant, we should be very clear on what the public good is that we're trying to achieve. And I think we may have lost that. So that's an area for further study. Thanks.
Does anyone have any questions for Scott or Steve? I can't see the raise hand feature, so I'm not sure if that is just disabled on my end but just throw your hand up or jump in. I have one question just to get the ball rolling. Scott, you mentioned that there was a recommendation for dormitory style housing. That seemed odd to me considering the nature of all the different downtown communities. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. In this case, I think it was a comment that they heard from folks in the private sector. You're very correct that we need to look at, in some cases, the structures of our downtowns to see whether that's actually appropriate in our downtowns. It might be that that's a housing form that we look to in other parts of our settlement areas. Just in thinking about the 9 downtowns they looked at, I'm having trouble visualizing a property where we could get that unless there's some ability to convert some of those top floors of the commercial buildings. But it's certainly a key recommendation, but it may or may not be a good fit in the downtown in that regard.
Are there any next steps relating to this report? So it's been done. Where does it go from here?
Another great question. So we plan to bring a report to Committee of the Whole in early January on this, just to make all of County Council aware of this. And spoiler alert, but one of the recommendations of that report will be that we share it with all of our planning partners across the 9 municipalities, as well as our municipal economic development staff. I think at all levels, there's areas that we can implement within our own fields of study. So for example, in planning, we have a number of our municipalities right now that are looking at reviewing their official plans. So some of these recommendations might become useful in reviewing their official plans. From an economic development perspective, we have a number of municipalities that are in the final stages of their community improvement plans. So I think for some of those municipalities, it might be interesting to see if there's any recommendations they can put into the plans. And for others, it might be that when they look to review that programming in the future, it gets considered at that stage. So I think there won't be one body implementing this project. It's our hope that there'll be a number of bodies across the county in that regard.
Do you foresee anything from this report impacting any policy at the county level? Any broader planning frameworks or anything that might change as a result of this report? Or is it strictly a resource that the lower tiers may use?
Another good question. I think at the county level, there are some points we could pick out. We are looking at doing a housekeeping amendment to our county official plan sometime probably in the first quarter of 2021 to implement the findings of our growth management strategy. And I think at that point, it would be a good time to look at our settlement area policies, and particularly any policies that focus on the downtown. Traditionally, the structure of the county plan has been that we defer to municipal plans for the settlement areas, and particularly the downtowns. But I think there's room for some overall guiding policy without stepping on municipal toes in that regard that might be useful for help help set the stage for some of those more detailed municipal policies. So I don't see it being a radical overhaul of our county official plan, but there's certainly some tweaks that could be made to support some of the findings of this report.
Thank you. Any other questions from the group? Shirley?
Thanks, Andrew, and thanks, Scott, for the report. And I think what you've just stated kind of leads into my question as we see a movement towards accommodations above our commercial units in the downtown, and some are being renovated into high-end units. We have one in Meaford being renovated into an Airbnb, and I see recommendations in this report to look at affordable housing above our storefronts. So I'm just wondering, within the context of this report and any official plan recommendations that may come out of it in terms of this type of mixed housing in our downtowns, and how you might approach that.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, it's something we need to consider, and we're hopeful that with the community improvement plans, and I should have mentioned, I guess, at the beginning of this, that between the 9 member municipalities, all have either had their community improvement plans approved now or have got it on the project list for 2021 to get those documents finalized. So we are seeing great uptake on the community improvement plans, and we're hopeful that with some of the funding incentives that can be offered through those plans, that we'll see more affordable housing or attainable housing across our municipalities, whether in the downtown or other locations. Certainly at the county and municipal level in the planning documents, we can promote those affordable housing projects, and we can try to remove the barriers to the extent feasible. And there was a report to the County Committee of the Whole the other day on development charges and some programs to look at making it easier for rental housing and other such development projects. But we're hoping with the community improvement plans and for lack of a better word, money on the table, that we will see some more uptake in terms of having some of these downtown residential spaces as either affordable or attainable. At this point, we don't know yet whether that'll be successful, but that's certainly one of the things that we're looking at and we'll be reviewing as we look at our community improvement plans going forward and those impact audits they talked about.
Thank you. Great question, Shirley. Any others? Go ahead, Selwyn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's interesting, Scott mentioned money on the table. I think, that's what it's going to take. I don't see business people doing things necessarily just out of the goodness of their heart. We need affordable housing. And so now I'm going to convert this property that I have into affordable housing. I think there's going to need to be money on the table, and we have to show with the carrot and the stick that it makes sense, business sense, to incorporate affordable housing into your business plan. So for me, that's the key. It's there are many excellent. I'm looking at this report and I see many excellent suggestions. I think that we as a municipality and along with the lower tier partners need to pick out those ones that are sort of the low-hanging fruit, and how can we incentivize people to, from a business perspective, say this makes sense. And so it's going to come down to us putting some money on the table, as Scott says.
Thank you. Great points. Go ahead, Joel.
Was there anything looked into about seasonal housing needs, especially around the Blue Mountain area? There's like a big influx at different seasonal times, which obviously makes things a little bit more complicated. Yeah, just that question.
Thank you.
That's a great question. I'd have to go back through the report. I must admit, off the top of my head, I can't recall seeing anything specific to seasonal. I know the one issue we did have them look up, just to follow up on Councillor Keaveney's points and some points that were made at County Council by Town of Blue Mountains councillors, was the impact of short-term accommodations and potentially the Airbnbs in our downtowns. largely they didn't find that to be a huge concern in most of our municipalities. But unless Steve has anything, I can't recall anything specific to seasonal accommodations in that regard. And maybe that's something we need to do further research into in the future in this regard.
Yeah, I don't, they looked at a lot of different things and a lot of issues. I don't know that that was specifically discussed or raised by either side.
It's Andrew here. I think the fact that they came with a recommendation for dormitory style tells me that they were thinking about the seasonal, but that might be a follow-up question. I think that's logically, that's where it makes sense to me, given that they went there. But whether that applies across all municipalities, I'm not sure. Clearly, lots of questions and interest in this report, I think, which should be a good message to those of you who are looking at your own plans in your municipalities and regions and at the county level. This type of downtown revitalization as well as housing are clearly important priorities. So with that, if there's other questions, feel free to email the team and they can bring them forward, and thanks for that report. Let's just stay on top of our, go ahead, Selwyn, before we move on.
Sorry, Mr. Chair. One important thing I think I would like to mention is, given my upbringing, I'm really opposed to these sort of ghettos. So I don't think that when we're looking at affordable housing, necessarily we want to look at projects like the Jane Finch type of model, because it does create, I guess the term that's come up of late is hotspots. I think we're, and Owen Sound is a clear example. You've got a troublesome hotspot of late. I think we are looking for affordable housing to be a part of the mix, so that it's not just we're going to take the poor people and put them over here. And that's your space. And we have, 500 affordable dorm type units over here. And we put all of those problems into one area and create the quote hotspot. I think we're looking for that mix.
Uh-oh, I think we've lost him.
That's going to be attainable and affordable. And I love the idea of the commercial conversions as well.
Well, I think the very nature of this report focusing on those existing downtown main streets is sort of part of that DNA and that philosophy. I think that's a good point to raise. Okay, let's move on to Agenda 3C, the EDTC ED work plan priorities and staffing. So over to you, Savannah.
Excellent, thank you. So when we met,
sorry, Savannah, Mr. Chair, we do need a seconder to put this on the floor.
Oh, to put this on the floor because we have a motion?
We have a recommendation, yes.
Okay, do we want to have a mover and a seconder to put it on the floor? Or do we want to hear about it first and then a mover and a seconder to accept the recommendation?
In order to have a discussion about the report, we do need a mover and seconder so that Savannah can present the report and we can have discussion.
All right, so can we have a mover? John? And a seconder? Rob? Do we need to do an all in favor?
That will be at the end.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Sorry, Heather. So when we met last meetings, both individually, we had promised that we would be coming back with a work plan for you. And that's part of the reason why we thought today would be a great opportunity to bring you together as a joint meeting so that we can present this once, given the direction that we're going to better amalgamate economic development and tourism together. And we also knew that you would be both of interest in the housing side of things and the transportation. So this is a good meaty meeting for you this morning. So what we have in front of you is the report that's been put together based on the 2021 work priorities. And these priorities really truly came from all of our member municipalities and our partners around the region. So this has been developed through our Economic Development and Tourism Working Group, which has 35 representatives from all across Grey County. Lots of familiar faces on this call who also sit on that working group as well. where we have representatives from every municipality. We have provincial and federal representatives, community partners. Georgian College sits with us, as well as Blue Mountain Village Association, because of the breadth and the reach that these organizations have. And we truly believe that this is where our planning needs to happen, because it makes sure that we're always pulling everything up from the ground instead of us laying a blanket over and saying, this is what we'd like you to do, because it doesn't work like that. We need to make sure that we're listening and providing those actions based on where the gaps are, because we know that every one of our municipalities, you have a lot going on. All of your staff are wearing multiple hats, and that's where we as the county can, step in and fill those gaps and see where everyone is struggling with the same things or everyone's identifying the same opportunity. Then we can provide that broader scale and scope. So over the last several months, the Economic Development Working Group has been talking about, where do we go in 2021, given in 2020 we threw out our work plans and rejigged everything and had a plan A, B, and C, and know very well that 2021 could be the exact same thing. But through those conversations, we also realized that there are a lot of themes that are kind of re-emerging that we had seen going into 2021, and now we're anticipating there'll be even stronger themes as we head into the new year. So that is where this work plan has come from. Another piece that our team has done over throughout the pandemic, just like our business community has, we've been readjusting ourselves and paying attention to what's working and what's not, and what could we do internally to kind of revise how we do our business every day. And that came through staffing adjustments. So at the beginning of the pandemic, we had adjusted ourselves into 3 very specific teams. One very heavily focused on communications, one focused on the economic development and recovery side, and then one focused on our business consultations and training. And we found that worked really, really well. So instead of going by our typical departments, we reevaluated based on expertise and put those folks together. And what we're recommending now is that we keep that a permanent thing. Because it has worked very well. We've been able to embed tourism directly in economic development and communications. We've been able to build in backups for all of our staff so that no one is taking on an area alone. There's always a team around them. And that's been really important. And we found that has been very successful, and we'd like to continue that going. So we've got 3 different staffing adjustments here that we have included. One being our tourism marketing communication specialist will move into the communications department to be permanently rooted with our communications team. Grey Roots Media and Communications Coordinator will move from Grey Roots also to be embedded in our communications team with Rob. And tourism partner and media relations specialist will be moved into economic development to become an economic development officer focused specifically on tourism. So those are the 3 adjustments. We're not adding any new staff in that case. We're just moving our departments around. A big piece of this is also, I'm sure this next paragraph popped out to several of you, and I see Brian is right beside me on my screen here, but we're trying to get ready for his retirement at the end of next year. And we want to make sure that we do this very carefully because Brian has been an absolutely integral part of tourism in Grey County for a very long time. And we don't want to lose any of that knowledge, any of that direction. So we want to take the time that we have to be able to transition and make sure that we do this properly. Where we will see one staffing addition will be in the communications department, and that's to cover pat leave and my mat leave. I'll be off for 6 months in 2021. So make sure that we have the proper people in place. We'll have a digital specialist added to communications so that we can keep everything going. So those are the big adjustments that we've looked at internally based on lessons learned over the pandemic and what's really worked well. Looking at the priorities, the buckets that we presented to you last year haven't changed. They are still staying the same with investment, attraction, retention, and entrepreneurship. And that's because we're really seeing these come back larger than expected. Foreign direct investment and looking at those investment opportunities is absolutely top of mind. Grey County and all of rural Ontario has become much more popular throughout the pandemic, and we expect that's going to stay the same post-pandemic. because people are realizing they don't need to be in the GTA or in the urban centers. They can do business elsewhere, and we want to capitalize on that. We don't want to lose those opportunities. So that is absolutely top of mind, and working again with all of our member municipalities to do that FDI training so that we are ready, because it is a beast on its own. There's a lot of very quick turnarounds, a lot of very specific inquiries, and we need to make sure that we're ready to answer those types of questions. The conversation we just had about living on Main Street and our community improvement plans, that is absolutely top of mind as well, making sure that we're working with all of our member municipalities to implement. And as Scott said, most of our municipalities have now officially passed their CIPs. And for those who haven't, they are on the way, and they will be done in 2021. So that's really exciting that every single one of our member municipalities will have a CIP in place, and we can actually participate in those investment opportunities and help encourage that, where we can put money on the table, where we can partner both municipally and county-wide with a private investor or a private business to help make that business case more solid. And within that is also a business mix analysis. And this is something that several of our member municipalities had asked for. And I know at TAC last meeting, we had a conversation about looking at downtowns and what does that mix look like, and what are we missing, and who do we actually have in our downtowns? So this business mix analysis will be using the OMAFRA tool that currently exists as part of the CIP process or the downtown revitalization, so that we can take it in-house and as Grey County work with our member municipalities to truly map out what those downtown areas look like, and then we'll know where those gaps are. Tourism infrastructure has also become an overwhelming theme throughout COVID. We have seen our neighbors over the last several years talk about overcapacity and their worries about being overcapacity. Well, we are also there now. And we have conversations about this weekly, trying to coordinate and figure out, what can we do on the ground to improve that infrastructure so that we are ready and we're not hindering capacity, we're not hindering movement, we're actually enabling that type of development. So in 2021, that becomes a huge priority, and Brian has already started that ball by pulling together many of the landowners, whether they're private, public. We have, I think, the provinces at the table, you've got the municipalities at the table, trying to pull everyone together to really truly set a plan and all go in the right direction and the same direction so that we can be ready. We've also included part of the implementation for Cycling and Trails Master Plan, especially on the signage front of things. And we were fortunate enough to have an allocation from the federal and provincial infrastructure program that came out, and that will go towards improving the CP rail trail by further stone dusting as well as signage. So you should see a lot of infrastructure improvements in 2021. Looking at product and experience development, continuing to build on Made in Grey, because we had just started building on that and then had to stop, but the excitement is still certainly there, especially from an agri-food side of things, but also continuing the work that Allison has started with Tourism Matters and reinforcing that product and experience development side of things, making sure that we're focused still on that shop local and building consumer confidence, because that's what we need to maintain. We have seen it grow and dip throughout the pandemic as numbers change and uncertainty grows and changes, which does not help businesses. We need to continue to build that confidence. And we have been so inspired by our business community and how amazing they have been. And Dr. Era cannot give our businesses enough credit, because they have just done a wonderful job in following protocols and making sure that their staff are safe and the public is safe and the residents are safe. And that is absolutely key. So we want to keep promoting that because that's something that we can help get the word out behind. And then making sure we're looking at shovel-ready projects, knowing that there are going to be other dollars put into the economy to help the recovery side when we do finally get there, and making sure that we're ready for them. So by doing the studies that we're doing now, by making sure that we've got the projects and we know where those absolute key drivers are, we're better positioned to actually go after those grants and those funds as they do come out. So that again is why that stays on as part of our key priority under investment. Looking at attraction and retention, our local immigration partnership is up and going as of July of this year. So we have another 3 to 5 years of fully funded from IRCC, which is a federal program to deliver the local immigration partnership here. And YMCA received the same funding for the actual direct services to newcomers. So combined, we have full settlement services here in Grey and Bruce for the next 3 to 5 years, which is really good news. And with that comes diversity and inclusion training. And we know that that's something that all of our member municipalities are starting to talk about and looking for where that might be available. We will be able to provide that through Grey County. We started a little bit of that training with New to Grey when Jacinda first came on board, and we'll be able to carry that forward now that we have both Jacinda and Melissa on staff and working through the local immigration partnership and the attraction retention side of things. Also looking at focus around healthcare and skilled trades. Those needs are not changing at all. They're not going anywhere, they're getting worse continually, and we need to make sure that there is more focus. So we've been working a lot with Georgian College lately, which is very exciting. And Lisa's gonna help us figure out that on the ground training and that, you know, that workforce development side to go with the attraction retention campaign, because they both go together. We can't have one without the other. If we're going to bring people to the area and help them stay in the area, they also need to have the proper training so that we're avoiding that skills gap that to this point has been our major stumbling block. We had a presentation as well this week with our Hanover Owen Sound Task Force and Gemma and Linda from YMCA. They also presented, and we were talking about unemployment rates and, you know, where things are today versus where they were. Labor still being one of our largest challenges. And right now we're sitting at a 5.4% unemployment rate, which is the lowest in the province still. That is lowest in the province is our consistent message that always seems to go along with unemployment rate. So pre-pandemic, we were anywhere between 2 and 2.4% unemployment rate, which meant we had nobody available. And if we are at 5.4 in the middle of a pandemic, it's not going to look good when we come out on the other side. So we really need to keep our foot on the pedal on the attraction and retention side to make sure that we are doing everything possible, which means looking at the affordable, attainable housing, looking at transportation. We cannot retain folks if we don't have those in place to begin with. So everything certainly ties together. And we'll use the Connected Jobs site as one of the promotion tools that we have, because it is a one-stop shop for our entire region. It covers all 4 counties, Grey, Bruce, Huron, and Perth. And it is a vacuum of all of the different jobs that are posted around, and then they sit in one spot, which is a great tool. It saves people time of having to look elsewhere and puts it all in one area. So we want to make sure that we're doing everything we can to promote that and get it embedded on all of our municipal sites and any of the other sites that are available to get that information out there. Sydenham Campus Workforce Development, that is going to be a huge piece. Sydenham actually ties both workforce and entrepreneurship together because it has the space and the potential to be able to deliver on both of those items. So right now, working with Georgian College, YMCA, local employers on that workforce development side, again, to keep that training local so that employers don't have to send people out of the region. It helps as an introduction and then builds that pipeline right into Georgian, since they are right next door, to be able to provide the training with the courses that Lisa and Fred have continued to build as we see more apprenticeships come to the Owen Sound campus and we see more opportunities. So making sure that pipeline stays and grows. But on the entrepreneurship side, Courtney and Taylor have just been phenomenal. Business Enterprise Center is just going forward at gung-ho. Unbelievable how much interest in entrepreneurship has come out of the pandemic. And what we know from talking to individuals is that they took the opportunity to realize what it was they truly wanted through this, which on one side is great news because it means we have new businesses coming to the area. We're seeing succession that has taken years and years before. There are businesses that have been for sale for eons and they are now sold through the pandemic, which is not a time when you would have thought that these types of movements would have been made, but they're happening almost weekly. So continuing to support that through consultations, mentorship and advisorship. They've seen great results through the mentorship and advisorship side of things compared to the webinars and training that has been typically mandated by the province. So with their permission, that's a movement that we've certainly seen, and we're going to try and continue on through 2021. And that also means a good partnership with Catapult Grey Bruce, which is now officially up and off the ground. The mentorship program launched a couple weeks ago, and it's a 6-month pilot to really formalize the scaling side of things. So we have for a long time had the business startup supports, but we haven't had the business scaling for those businesses who have been around for several years and are looking to take themselves to the next level. That is where Catapult will fill that gap for us. So when we look at all of the different priorities that have been put together, none of this discounts all of the typical everyday work that staff are doing anyways on the business investment side and the business inquiry answering and making sure that our listings are up to date and we're building those networks and those collaborations. These are on top of that because that's where we're seeing the trends go, the trajectory grow, and that's where municipalities are saying they need the most help. And it all ties back again to bringing, more dollars into our economy through that business investment, but making sure we have the people so that we can continue to support entrepreneurship, but we can also continue to support the labor force, because the more people who have decided to go into their own business means they're coming out of the workforce in terms of labor. So it's a good news, bad news, kind of all at the same time. And that's why that attraction retention side, it really fits in the middle, because it means so much to both investment and entrepreneurship as we go forward. And this isn't new information to you either. The committees and advisory groups and task forces that our staff sit on are included there as well. And we don't know what those recommendations will be that come out of there, but we'll make sure that we've got the flexibility and the ability to work towards any recommendations that we do see in 2021 that come out through those task forces and advisory committees. So that was a lot of information to throw at you and not a lot of time, but if you have any questions, please let us know. And all of our staff, they are all here. So if you have a specific question about a specific area, we've got the people here to answer for you.
Thanks, Savannah. Great report, lots on the go.
Yes.
Ian, go ahead.
Yeah, quick question for Savannah. I think she mentioned job site. And I'm just wondering, is that a website, and where can we go and look? I see jobs in Bruce. I can't find what you're talking about.
Yes, it is a website. It's called Connect to Jobs.
Okay.
It covers Grey Bruce, Huron, and Perth.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yes, no problem. You can also find it on madeandgrey.ca. We've embedded it there, and we'll be working with Brent to get it on Owen Sound and all of our other municipalities as well. Oh, thanks, Rob. There's the link. Yeah, there's also a really cool feature on there. This was actually the site that we had talked about through EdPAC. And I know, Tom, you were very excited about getting this site up and going because it was going to bring everything into one spot. But Gemma actually did it for us. So 4 County Labor Market Planning Board went ahead and did it for all 4 counties. So we now have access to it, and we can put our dollars towards promotion instead of building the site, which is great. And it also includes a census tool. And that is a very important tool as part of our community profiles, because it maps and provides reports on every piece of census data collected by region. So it can go to the municipal level, or you can look at the region as a whole, and it allows you to compare and contrast different locations. So we've heard really good things from investors at this point, because if you want instead, say for example, we have a business who's looking at Hanover, but they want to know what the market looks like, they can also select Brockton and West Grey and see this is what the actual market trend looks like. So it's a really good tool, and as part of that website as well.
Great. Any other questions, Shirley? Then Rob.
Thanks, Andrew, and thank you so much, Savannah. It's just incredible all that you're doing, and you are so appreciated. Just a couple of quick things. At our county council meeting last week when Chad Richards presented, he spoke about Canada's green energy frontier, and I wondered how or if that tied into what you were doing. And just before I let you go, you talked about overcapacity, and I know that is an issue in a lot of areas within Grey County, but it's not in Meaford. So you can send anything our way that you would like.
Sounds good. That's great, Shirley. And yes, the presentation that we had from Chad last time, that's part of the regional table that we sit at. So that is part of the TriCounty Partnership with Bruce Gray, Huron, and Bruce Power that was started in 2016 and is now transitioning into the Clean Energy Frontier program. So we'll be bringing a report back to Council in January to talk about what our involvement looks like and what our participation looks like in that. But yes, very much part of our work plan.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Rob.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. And by the way, our meeting has been set back, so you and I are not skipping out of anything.
Okay.
And my question to Stephanie is, or sorry, to Savannah is, I don't see much here about rural broadband, and it's only going to become more and more important in the future. So, and it will underlie all of these things, including labor attraction, if we have better access, not only in the rural areas, but even within the built up areas. So are we going to be looking at that, or is that outside of the scope of your committee or your work?
Through you, Mr. Chair, definitely part of economic development, but also part of IT, part of CIO, part of communications. It kind of covers all of Grey County. And very much following along with SWIFT. So we are very excited to see SWIFT projects and to see signs and construction already starting, which is great news. But our key role in this is certainly listening to the businesses and finding out where the needs are and doing everything we can to communicate that back through our Western Ontario Ordnance Caucus table. And I know we have Warden Hicks and our CAO are very involved with SWIFT and Western Ontario Wardens by keeping that connection going. So we have been listening to businesses and helping with promotion through that, but that's the extent to this point. And I think, Kim, maybe you have some more to add to. You're muted again.
Actually.
Hey. You're good.
There, is that better?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thanks. I think the challenge with broadband is that it is, I think, a much larger question. The resources that are required to really move things forward in a meaningful way go far beyond what Grey County might be able to accomplish on their own, which is why having Warden Hicks sitting at the SWIFT board table is so important. But overall, Western Ontario Wardens coming together and working jointly with the Eastern Ontario Wardens Caucus to really do a wonderful job of advocating for the needs of rural Ontario, wherever that is. We need the provincial and the federal governments at the table making the investments that are going to attract those private sector providers to make investments in our communities and in our rural areas.
Go ahead, Selwyn.
Yes, just to pick up on that, it's exciting to see SWIFT making some progress. We've got, shovels in the ground and it's a nice start, but it's a very small start. And, we know that 75% of the residents in Grey County don't have that minimum standard set by the CRTC, which is 50 and 10. If SWIFT 2.0 is successful, which is why we've got such a strong lobbying effort on the go, that number will change to 95% served. So we are maybe putting a lot of eggs in that SWIFT 2.0 basket, but it will require extensive lobbying. The good news is that for the most part, we have the province at the table as good, willing partners. And we have a fair bit of work to do still with the feds. But those meetings are happening and the lobbying is definitely underway. So cross our fingers and hope for good news on that front.
You know, I wonder, I think in our circles, people are aware of this program and the lobbying needs, but I think the general public in our county is probably less aware. And I think there's a real opportunity now in that so many people are working from home, and I'm amazed that my internet has not kicked out during this so far, because usually it does. But there's probably an opportunity to engage local citizens in that advocacy effort and to tell the story of how economically important it is. So I encourage anyone who's overseeing that to think about a comms effort there. I think now is the time, while we're all working from home and trying our best to do so. Any other comments on that? Or I know we have to pass a motion, so just want to make sure that we you know, are there any other questions that anyone wants to pose to Savannah before we go there?
Thought I saw Tom's hand.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And to Savannah, I just went on that website real quick, Savannah, and it's I've looked at it before, but where are we generating the leads for the employment? How are those coming into you?
Those are vacuumed from, I think, 15 or 18 different sources. And every time we find a new source that we think is a good one, we send it to Gemma and then they include it. So they ask, it's actually run through Windsor Essex Workforce Planning Board that has done this for many municipalities across the province. And they add it to the list, and within an hour it's updated. So that map changes every hour as new postings come up, and as old postings close, it's constantly switching. And then we get a monthly report that tells us what job seekers look like, what the postings look like, and we can do a comparison. And it's very interesting how different the posting versus the seeking is, and that is part of that gap issue that we need to keep working with. So we're hoping that in the new year, Kim Tremblay has been helping me put together a chart and map some of this so that we can better see those gaps. So we'll hope to have that to you next year.
Okay, thank you. And one other question, just if this is getting rolled out to the schools, I guess the reason is because there's some skilled labor. I just had a quick look at it. I'll look at it again later, but there is some skilled labor that's there, and I just wonder if we could, get to the schools so we can start pointing some of these students in the right direction, and that will help us to retain some instead of them departing to the city and the big pie in the sky, if you will. But when there's lots of opportunity right in front of us. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Great. Thank you. Any other questions? All right. Well, now, I believe that what we will do is, do you want to pull that that motion on the screen so everyone can see it?
Sure, I can do that.
So it has been on the floor for discussion. Now, would you like me to read it for those who are on the phone?
Sure, please.
The report EDTC ED 0321 regarding 2021 economic development and tourism priorities and staffing be received for information, and that operational priorities of investment attraction and retention and entrepreneurship along with staffing changes be adopted as presented for consideration by council through the 2021 budget process. So now that we've had it on the floor for discussion, can I have a mover and a seconder for that?
We actually have John Woodbury and Rob Potter moved and seconded, so you just need the final vote.
Okay, final vote. All in favor? Or do we go one by one or just all in favor?
All in favor is perfect. Thank you.
All in favor? Any opposed? All right. That motion is passed.
Mr. Chairman, just one very quick thing. In the agenda, it talks about report 0321, and the motion talks about 0221.
That was an oversight on my part. It's been fixed in the minutes going forward, so everything should be lining up.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, with that being completed, let's move on to agenda item 3D, Planning Department Project Summary. Over to you, Randy.
Great. Thanks, Andrew, and good morning, everyone. So we wanted to provide a list of strategic projects and initiatives that the Planning Department is planning to do in 2021. Some of these projects are a continuation of projects that started this year, and some are new projects. I'm not going to go through the project in detail, but I'll just highlight some of the projects, and if there are any questions about any of these projects, we can try to answer those. So we've broken down the projects into planning projects and studies. We've also got the category of county forests and trails, as well as data analysis, civic addressing, and GS mapping related projects. With respect to the planning project studies, one of the projects that we'll be finalizing in 2021 is the Climate Change Action Plan. And this is a plan that is focusing on developing strategies for reducing greenhouse gas emissions, both corporately as well as within the overall community. We plan to have a draft community improvement plan, climate change action plan completed in the first quarter of 2021, and we can share some of the draft results from both committees if there's an interest. One of the other key projects that is talked about, I think, already at length is the Affordable Housing Work Plan implementation. And this is a joint project with County Housing and Economic Development. And the Affordable Housing Task Force is one of the task forces that has been started in 2020, has developed an action plan which staff are in the process of implementing and bringing forward further information to that task force, actually later this afternoon, to discuss funding requirements to help implement the action plan. This will create more affordable housing units as well as attainable housing units throughout the county, because as the warden noted, a mix of both affordable and attainable housing is key for any new builds, and both are required throughout the county. The county is also working on initiatives to encourage even more attainable housing, such as the Community Improvement Plan program that has been talked about already, as well as changes to the county's development charges bylaw to exempt new purpose-built rental housing, as well as nonprofit housing developments from a county development charge. And that's the carrot, so to speak, that the warden mentioned earlier on in the meeting. So that's just an overview of some of those projects. We also, again, not going to go through in all the projects listed, but because there's quite a few. Another key project is working with our municipalities on local official plan reviews that are planning updates to their official plans. And county staff will work with those municipalities as part of those official plan updates. And as Scott mentioned, policies and documents like living on Main Street, or as well as updates to the provincial policy statement. Those are some of the things that we'll be looking at trying to incorporate into those official plan updates. With respect to another project, one is listed as project number 8 is the Town of Blue Mountain subdivision delegation request and other potential planning process improvements. So the county has received a request from the Town of Blue Mountains to delegate the approval authority for plans of subdivision and condominiums and part lot control bylaws. Council has directed staff to bring back a staff report on the consideration for this request, and also review the current overall planning process and explore other options which may identify further efficiencies. To assist with this background information, a survey has gone out to local municipal staff, municipal councillors, planning consultants, developers, as well as neighboring counties, asking them about delegated approvals and asking for their input on the current process and what suggestions they may have to improve the existing process. Information regarding the survey and potential options can come back to the Economic Development Planning Advisory Committee in the new year as further information for that committee to review. We will be bringing back a report to council. We're planning in the first quarter of 2021. Another key project is what we're calling the settlement area boundary facilitation. So earlier this year, council supported a staff report directing staff to research options for facilitation of settlement area and boundary considerations for settlement areas that are adjacent to a neighboring municipality or even adjacent to a neighboring county, and directed staff to bring back a report to present the research findings and to discuss next steps. So there are a number of settlement areas throughout the county that are either adjacent to a neighboring municipality or a neighboring county. And it's important to ensure that municipalities have adequate lands designated and serviced to meet their projected growth needs over, which is now a new planning horizon, a new 25-year planning horizon. It's recognized that land cannot be designated and serviced overnight, and therefore advanced planning is crucial, as in some cases these processes can take years before land is ready to be built upon. Staff are in the process of finalizing some research regarding this topic, and we will be bringing back a report to council in 2021. Another project that's outlined in project number 11 there, which is the housing feasibility study and engineering studies for the lands in Durham. So as part of the redevelopment of Rockwood Terrace in Durham, which is one of the county's long-term care homes, the county was able to acquire approximately 30 acres of land in the town of Durham. And not all this land is required for the new Rockwood Terrace, and therefore the county has hired a consultant to look at what other housing options could be considered on the lands and to develop concept plans for council's consideration. This project has recently commenced and is scheduled to be completed in April 2021. And again, we can share those results once we have those from the consultant. Another key project is our growth management study update and associated housekeeping official plan amendment. There were changes to the provincial policy statement in 2020 that now allow municipalities to use a planning horizon of 25 years as opposed to 20 years when planning for their community's growth. And we know a number of municipalities will be updating their official plans. So to ensure that we have a 25-year growth, future growth projections, the county has hired a consultant to update those projections and allocations for each local municipality. We should be receiving a draft of the results this week, actually, and we will share with local municipalities for review and comment. This will lead to a county official plan amendment to update the growth projections and allocations, and will also assist with the development charges background study update, which is another project that is commencing in 2021. Another key project is what we're calling the Regional Agricultural Learning and Demonstration Site. And this is a partnership project with the Owen Sound Agricultural Society and Chatsworth Agricultural Society to create this Regional Agricultural Learning and Demonstration Site, which is directly adjacent to Grey Roots. And Everett and Maryland Hall are generously donating the land that will allow for the creation of this site to happen. And this site will provide a location for both residents and visitors to learn about the importance of agriculture, how food is grown, and where our food comes from. The site will also host a regional fair as well as other agricultural associated events. The synergies between Grey Roots and the Regional Agricultural Learning and Demonstration Site are quite immense. And in speaking with Savannah and Jill Patterson, our Grey Roots manager, they're both very excited about this partnership. Staff have prepared a Niagara Escarpment Plan Amendment application and planning justification report, which will be submitted to the NEC before the Niagara Escarpment Commission before the end of this year. Another project that's slated for 2021 is our age-friendly community strategy. And Grey's aging demographic is anticipated to continue as increasing numbers of retirees are choosing, obviously, to locate to the county for lifestyle purposes. Simultaneously, the county is experiencing a large outmigration of people in their 20s and 30s due to a number of factors. So in order to build on work done as part of Recolor Grey and past projects, the age-friendly community strategy would provide a roadmap to guide the corporation and also inform the work of local municipalities and other community partners to help ensure that decisions and actions reflect and respond to the needs of youth and older adults in our communities. On the County Forests and Trails section, Recreational Trails Master Plan, which was approved by the County Council in late 2019, provides a number of action items to improve the overall county-owned trails. And these are both our trails in our county forests as well as the CP Rail Trail. We've started to implement some of those action items to improve signage and other things in our county forests. And this work will continue in 2021 with improvements made to the CP Rail Trail, improved signage, gates, and exploring opportunities for adding parking facilities and much more. This is basically to enhance the overall trail user experience for our county forest and our CP Rail Trail. And this also aligns with the next project on the list, which is the Cycling and Trails Master Plan, which Savannah has already spoken to. This again is something that we want to make sure that the work that we're doing with respect to our county forest and our CP Rail Trail align with the overall Cycling and Trails Master Plan. We are also finalizing our forest management plan update, which guides how we manage our county forests. And we're also planning a forest management bylaw update in 2021. Around the data analysis and civic addressing GS mapping category, there's a number of data analysis support that we provide for various departments throughout the corporation, as well as a number of committees and task forces that are currently requiring some data analysis to support some of the work that is currently being reviewed by those various groups. We're also working on official plan and zoning bylaw mapping supports for both the county as well as local municipalities. So that's just a quick highlight of some of the projects that we're planning in 2021, and be happy to take any questions from both committees.
Thanks, Randy. Any questions for Randy? I don't see any. Going once, going twice. Oh, Rob, go ahead.
Actually, just quickly, Randy, and you probably get this question from us a lot, but I haven't checked with town staff. Where do we stand with the 19 and 21 project in terms of the dates?
In terms of the dates, so last dates I've heard is that part of the 2021 and 2022 will be some of the utility relocation. So there's a lot of hydro lines that need to be moved. There's some other infrastructure in terms of a water booster station that the town owns and other things that need to be relocated as, to move forward with that roundabout. And then I think it's 2023 is the date that we're still proposing with respect to that roundabout in terms of constructing it.
Okay. Thank you. I know that's not really your bailiwick, but I know you're pretty knowledgeable. And secondly, the Trails Master Plan. Are we going to look at how that will fit into the, say, the official plan and that kind of thing, and how much of a priority will that be?
Yeah, so I think what we've seen throughout the pandemic is the importance of outdoor spaces and trails and being able to get outdoors for people just to have a mental break and to escape. And so we've seen huge increases on usage of those outdoor spaces and trails. As Savannah mentioned, we've allocated some funding that we received from, it's both from the federal and provincial governments to make some improvements with respect to our trails that would align with our recreational trails master plan as well as our cycling and trails master plans. In order to improve some of those current key assets in our communities. So that's something that we'll be moving forward with, especially the CP Rail Trail. We'll be looking at doing stone dusting. We're hoping to actually complete stone dusting from where we've currently have left off. So we've started at Owen Sound a few years ago, and we're now south of Berkeley. And we're hoping with the funding, if we get the right price, if we get the right bid, that we'll be able to complete the rest of that right down to Dundalk. So that'd be a 77-kilometer stretch of CP Rail Trail. It's part of a provincial trail network. It's a key backbone for our overall trail network throughout the county. It connects to some key other trails like the Georgian Trail and some other trails. So we think that's going to be hopefully a fantastic investment and allows for more people to be able to utilize that CP Rail Trail. As well as with that, we're also looking at signage and gates and other things to help improve the overall experience for our county forests and our trail systems. as well as adding things like parking facilities and other features. We're going to start exploring that and building in a part of a capital project plan for the next few years, which would see improvements in some of those parking facilities as well. So we're hoping that that will encourage more people to utilize some of these key assets in throughout the county, and again, provide those opportunities to get outdoors and enjoy our wonderful county that we live in.
Thank you. Other questions for Randy? I don't see any. One last opportunity. Okay, thank you, Randy. That's a major list of priorities. So our appreciation to the whole team for all that work, no doubt. Okay, we are moving on to the next agenda item, which is roundtable and discussion points. So maybe what I might do as chair is I might bounce this over to Savannah to perhaps moderate, or we can do that together. I don't know if you had a desire for us to do a roundtable, or for folks to just jump in with their top 3 issues for 2021.
Sure, yes. We were hoping to hear from our committee members just about anything that you're hearing specifically from your sector or from your networks, to make sure that we're aware of what the top issues are, if they're different from ours, or if we're finding that there are themes among this group as well. But just really wanted to hear, because you represent so many different organizations and networks. We don't want to miss that opportunity to hear directly from you.
Perfect. Okay, well, with that said, who would like to kick us off?
Okay,
Rob?
Rob? Yeah.
Rob and then Shirley?
Okay. Since mine are the ones we all know about, I thought I'd go first and get it over. And it's the housing, which is part of the bigger issue of labor attraction and labor retention. And then finally, the rural broadband. Because again, a big part of our economic development, and I think in the future, a big part of our tourism is going to be in agriculture. And we need to be able to make use of the broadband. Also, our kids and our farmers and our businesses are going to fall behind the rest of the world if they can't connect. So we in the Blue Mountains are taking some steps on our own, but we're going to need to work together to accomplish that. So not much of a surprise, I know.
Thanks, Rob. Shirley, you had your hand up.
I did, Andrew. Thank you. And certainly everything that Savannah has mentioned, and just as well as that, and something that I'm very curious about is as we continue with recovery efforts for our downtown businesses, and I don't know for sure about all the other lower tiers, but certainly Meaford has lost a number of businesses on our main street. And I'm trying to look for some support in determining what type of business can actually be successful now that people have shifted to online shopping, and I assume people will continue to do that. So how do we fill our downtown shores, and what types of retail, or is it retail that people want, or do they want cafes, or do they want services on their main streets? How do we determine what types of businesses to encourage to join us that can actually be successful post COVID?
That's a great point. Thank you. Who else would like to share? Sorry, that was Ian, go ahead.
Probably like Rob, I think it comes back to housing, labor attraction, and well, obviously COVID's going to be the big issue for the next year, and how do we deal with that? But maybe the other thing is it hasn't been on the front burner because we've got a shortage of labor, but I think we always need to be thinking about attracting new, I'm going to use the word industry, but not necessarily manufacturing, but sectors that we've got to be conscious of to keep attracting to the area. But for now, housing and labor are the two big that are intertwined.
Thank you. Who else would like to share? Go ahead, Lisa.
Hi, Andrew. Thank you very much. I, concur with everything that I'm seeing here, and just for those of you on the call that I haven't met with, I'm viewing things as through the eyes of a relative newcomer to Grey Bruce, having been here just over a little more than a year. So certainly, and I don't think we've really had the discussion. We talk about affordable housing, but the impact of the pandemic on the affordability of housing is just exacerbating that problem, certainly, and seeing that in terms of attraction. And the other thing that I haven't heard discussed at any of these meetings, and maybe this isn't the forum, so I apologize if structurally this gets discussed in another planning committee or area. But speaking from personal experience, access to primary health care could be a real deterrent. I know I've been here over a year and cannot find a family physician.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's the same across. My search has been fairly broad across Grey and Bruce to try and find that, and haven't had any luck so far. And I think that will be a concern and make it harder to attract people as well.
Yeah, of all cohorts and stages of life, for sure. Agree.
Yeah.
I agree. That's a good point to raise. And I think it's very appropriate in this forum because it's directly linked to economic development and growth. Yeah, thank you. Selwyn, go ahead.
Sorry, there you go. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Obviously, I've made a big deal in my inaugural speech around housing, affordable housing, so that's important to me. But I don't want us to get our eye off the ball on transportation, because we've had an update today and we're making good progress. But for years, we've been hearing that that transportation piece is extremely important as well. Obviously, expanding robust broadband to our rural communities has to remain high on the agenda. Of course, economic development and tourism and labor attraction is in there. Sorry, I'm way more than three. But included in all of this, the last one I want to mention is supporting our social services and mental health care professionals. Acknowledging that the last year and upcoming year, very difficult for people. And the challenges are tremendous. And I don't want to, I don't think it's possible to estimate the magnitude of the challenges that people are facing from a mental health perspective. And I think we'll see that continue to play out. It's already playing out in terms of the responses, the challenges that our police face. So I think that needs to have some highlight as well.
Yeah, great point. It's definitely on my list as well. Anyone else like to join in? Go ahead, Shirley.
Thanks, Andrew. A second point I had on my list was in relation to the mass urban exodus that we're seeing now. And certainly we're embracing all the young families in particular that are joining us. But we've also seen in the past a huge out migration. And how do we retain the folks that are finding us now? What are they looking for? Is it, certainly it's doctors for one thing, but is it recreational services? I'm wondering if there's some way to reach out to these folks who have recently moved to Grey and determine what it is that brought them here, but most importantly, what are they looking for to stay? Will they go back to the city when things settle down, or are they, here to settle? And just how can we sort of determine what their needs are and make sure that they continue to live in Grey County?
Yeah, in some respects where we have a great opportunity right now while so many people are looking at our community, and it is really up to us to, close the deal, so to speak. Learning about what the newcomers' interests are, I think is really important.
Can I?
Yeah.
Just to follow on Shirley's point, I think that's a really interesting, line of kind of research and analysis to undertake. But I would want Savannah and her team to accomplish something like that through the member municipalities and the members of the working group. They're going to be closest to the comments and that they hear from folks, and so I would just want to make sure that your economic development people in each of the lower tier municipalities were really, well involved in an initiative like that, because I think there's probably great learning for everybody.
Lisa, go ahead.
So following on from what Kim said, I just, Savannah didn't mention all the projects going on. She gave us a high level overview, but Savannah and Jacinda are on the call today, and I think kudos to them for reaching out. If I may just mention one specific project that they're working on that builds on that, and they reached out to us earlier in the fall about a project doing an application for making Grey Bruce home for international talents, and applied for funding through AMAFRA and received it as part of their RED program. And Georgian's a partner with that, as is Welcoming Communities. And the project recognizes we bring in a number of international students every year, but recognizes that international students don't get supported, don't receive the same supports. There's a gap. They fall through the cracks because they're not eligible for the same supports that new Canadians or new residents are as international students, because they don't have permanent residency yet. So this project is a project that they put together and are leading, and we've just been through the selection. The advisory committee has just been through the selection process and staffing it for a 4-month project to gather that data and make recommendations and establish some frameworks and foundations for making ensuring there's a positive community experience, not just at the college looks after the academic experience, but making sure there's a positive community experience when international students land here, to encourage them to stay after they graduate and remain in the community. So I just want to say kudos to the folks at Grey for reaching out and getting that project launched. And I hope we hope to get some really good data out of that about best practices and what works and how we can make those people, if we can make them feel welcome in the community, they're much more apt to stay in the community after they graduate.
Wonderful. That's amazing. Would anyone else like to share any of their priorities for 2021? John, go ahead.
Ours are similar in one way and a little different. Housing has got to be affordable housing has got to be a big problem in Southgate. Our prices have doubled with the amount of building and people moving up to the city from the city over the last few years. We've got a big influx of newcomers. And what's happened is there's a citizens group called Junction that's put together, and it's a group from newcomers as well as people that have been around for a while. And what they do is they focus on the community itself and its needs, and just getting together over common things. This Friday night, they're doing a virtual concert, and there's going to be, last time they did it, they had a Juno Award winner, as well as people that have been from the area here just playing an instrument and singing. And so they find ways of mixing people together on common ground to build the relationships. So that's fairly new off the ground here, but we're seeing the dividends like crazy. We're getting people involved. Our library board's got people on it that have only been here a matter of 6 months. On the same problem with the doctors and things like that, 2 years ago, we had one part-time doctor that left. Now we have the Southeast Grey Community Health Center running 2 buildings here, going to put up a 14,000 square foot medical center, and it's in process in the planning right now, been approved. And so not only do we have doctors now, but we have everything from physio to all kinds of things going on. and it's only going to get better. So we're in the mid stage of a few of these things. So our priorities are more of a support and push and help on a lot of it. And these groups are working together on things that they can do. Like I know the medical group is working with the Lions Club on turning a building that they own into affordable housing. So there's a lot of ours that are on the go. And the exciting thing is that they're coming from the community. And so council's doing what we can do with supporting and pushing things forward.
Wow, that's very impressive. Thank you for sharing that. It's refreshing to hear that community groups coming together to support newcomers and doing that in a collaborative way. Inspiring, in fact. Any other priorities to share? Yeah, go ahead, Ashley.
Just a couple of comments. You can hear me, can't you?
Yep.
Yeah, it's the first time I've talked, so I'd like to make sure that I can actually be heard before I go off on a tangent. Now, I agree with everything that everybody said. Yes, affordable housing is very, very important, as well as the type of affordable housing, as Warden Hicks pointed out, is also important. But there's another underlying problem I think we have as a county. Specifically in my municipality, and I have heard things about other municipalities, lower tier. We have been chatting with a lot of people, especially the newcomers that we were talking about earlier. Now, a lot of these people are simply hiding. They're hiding from the city, they're hiding from COVID, they're hiding from all of the things that we find ourselves being confronted with these days. And I have had a couple of conversations with newcomers who like it here and were considering maybe even relocating a business to this area. But I think what everybody on the call needs to understand is that I think there's a bit of, on a municipality basis, municipal government, lower tier, there's definitely a credibility problem. There's definitely, overall, I would just say it's just an image problem. Being who I am and the business that I am in, I am getting calls from developers, businesses almost weekly asking me about the area, what problems we have as local business, what opportunities there are. I have referred a couple of developers to the Meaford area in the last 3-4 weeks. But I really think that it's the underlying business practices, if you will, of the lower tier municipalities that has left a really bad taste in a lot of people's mouths that have been trying to relocate businesses up here. So I don't know what the answer is. I really, really don't. I just think, go ahead.
Yeah, Ashley, can you define that a little more? What are the issues with the business practices specifically? Is it lack of responsiveness, red tape? What are you hearing from the ground?
Essentially, I get a lot of people asking about my personal experiences. And simply put, any business relocating to my area, I will not lie to them. I'm just, that's just the way that we operate our business and our families here is we tell the truth about previous issues that we've had, current issues that may be about to explode for our business. But I've also heard a lot of other people talk about very poor communication would probably be the number one. Misleading statements, confusion about services that are out there. And of course, it's been ever since I've sat on this, in amongst this group talking about these things, I've heard about this, this unifying lower tier plan to have shovel-ready businesses and all of these things. But at the same time, I've had a handful of communications with different businesses that have come up against this, as in they don't know where to go, who to talk to, or make whatever they want to try up here actually happen. As well as some of the people that are relocating here, some of the people that are inquiring about building these things have very poor reputations as well as of their own. So it's on both sides of the fence, I guess you could say. But there really needs to be a little bit more unity, I would say, between the lower tier municipalities, and more of a standard way of operating and addressing people, and a different way to communicate with businesses. Certainly in my municipality, it seems every couple of years we're subjected to threats from the local government, and this is not a way to build our community, though it seems to be at times a standard operating procedure. And it's not just Grey Highlands as well. I have heard several things from other municipalities in our area.
Well, thank you. Thanks for that, Ashley. I appreciate it. And I think it's important for everyone to have that perspective. And I think it's very challenging for businesses to speak very openly about the challenges that they face. Oftentimes they aren't comfortable to do so. So I think it's great that you've raised those issues. I know I can speak from personal experience in the communities that I work in, that often smaller business does feel a little nervous to come forward. And so outspoken folks often shoulder the load for those who don't. So it's really important. I'm glad you raised that. Rob, you had a point to raise?
Well, actually more of a question. Do you think it would be helpful if we organized a forum of some kind where we could hear all this? Because it is important that we hear it. We won't do anything about it. It's fine they're talking to you, Ashley, and that's your great source. But we are the ones who need to hear it, the municipal councillors and the municipal staff. And I think that would be a great way. I know I did that with the sustainability plan here 10 years ago, where I talked to, actually we were going to invite you, but you were too busy at the time. But to hear what the businesses and potential or prospective businesses have to say, and maybe that should be one of our priorities in the next year, is to hear this kind of information, this kind of comment, because we won't fix it until we know more about it. And if we're talking about things like sustainability, housing, all those things, we need to fix some of these issues. Thank you.
Go ahead, Shirley.
Thanks, Andrew. And I just want to say thank you to you, Ashley, for being so brave and coming forward and mentioning those points. And in Meaford some years ago, we held a developers meeting, and to support and agree with Rob's comments, if we could organize something at that level again in a Zoom format where developers could be honest and share what their challenges are and what their barriers are. Because yeah, we absolutely want to address those, and I can think of a list of what they are in Meaford, and it's challenging because it involves investment from council, and you know, are we in a position to do that? So yeah, I would very much encourage a developers forum in some format, so that yeah, we can hear from folks such as yourself, Ashley, and understand these issues, and try to create a method of dealing with them. Thank you.
Thank you, Shirley. Kim, is that something that could be facilitated at the county level?
I have a couple of thoughts here. One, I think the idea of engaging with people, offering them a forum and a place to have those discussions is certainly something that we could work towards. I think you'd need to put some thought into that about who should be at the table, and I mean from the listening side of things. I think you'd just invite whoever wanted to come and be part of it from the developers side of things. I think there's probably some benefit to that. I also wonder if when I was at the province, we had a program called First Impressions, and we set up people to go into municipalities with a certain project in mind, and it was to really do an assessment of what did they get, what was the reception like, could you figure out what you needed to do, did you get your questions answered, and then that feedback from going through that first impressions process is feedback that goes back to that municipality, because they're not the people that work in the municipalities. They're not business people. They weren't born knowing what the cumulative impact is of the many steps that people have to go through to, get site plan approval or, be able to relocate a business into a new community. I think there's tons of opportunities for us to support all of the staff, because it goes way beyond economic development too. If there's anything I feel strongly about, it's that economic development is the face of that, but it has to be something, it's a mindset and an attitude that has to run through the entire staff of the municipality. If one area or one person who can, have an impact on this whole process isn't inside the tent, then everybody else's efforts really fall flat. And, for people to understand that, for the municipality to have a commitment and an understanding to learn about this and to do better, I think would, go a long way towards addressing the concerns that Ashley has. We can never really let down our guard on this. You think you've done enough and you've talked about it enough, but you haven't. You have to keep going. So I think certainly there's opportunities for us to work with that development community, but also maybe to set up something like this. And I'm sorry, Steve and Savannah, because I'm blindsiding you, but I do feel strongly that there's potential there.
You're right. Go ahead, Ashley. You had your hand up again.
Yeah, and it's, when I said a unified approach, especially with the lower tiers,
Yeah.
just to put a point on it. One gentleman that I had talked to, whose children attend the same school as mine, he was potentially thinking, he might even actually still be, of relocating his business from Toronto up here. And his comment to me was, why would I, how could I relocate my business or even contemplate relocating my business up here when I have to submit engineered drawings for 100 square foot addition to the cottage that my entire family are living in. And so people, and the people that we want to stay here, the people that we want to attract to stay here, are getting smacked in the face for these tiny little things along their journey, and then eventually saying, screw it, I'm not going to try and put up a 15,000 square foot building if I can't even get a 100 square foot addition on my home. Now, as far as some sort of forum, some sort of meeting group in order to talk about these things, I think Andrew hit the nail right on the head when he said that a lot of business people are afraid to bring up these concerns. Luckily, I'm big enough that I'm not really too afraid of a lot of people. Probably, if you really wanted to get a working meeting together to do something like this, you would reach out to those that have thrown in the towel for our area and gone somewhere else. Those are the people that don't have anything invested in this area, though they did try, and I bet you would find them a lot more willing to bring up all of the points that really made them turn from this area. So if anything like this is pulled together by the county, I could certainly reach out to quite a few people I know who have given up on Gray, and see if we can get them to the table, because they will be very honest.
Rob, and then I think we should move on to the next topic at hand, or the next. Yeah.
I'll try not to be too long. That's a good point, and I wonder if it'd be better to do this in small groups. and talk, because they're more likely to talk. If they're sitting at the back of a room of 60 people, or they're sitting looking at a screen of 50 or people, or however many you can see at once, they're less likely to take part. But if you get them into small groups, they are more likely to tell you what's on their mind. And if you have a good moderator, you can really dig down and get some honest answers. I don't need to be praised and that kind of thing. I need to hear the honest issues, because the only way we're going to attract businesses, developers, and that kind of thing is to deal with these things honestly. They are too smart to be bamboozled into following our lead. We have to listen to them.
Sure. And maybe a to-do, I think this is a great sharing session. I think maybe a to-do with, Savannah and Steve is maybe to digest this feedback and maybe consider some options to bring forward. And I fully support it. We are in an environment where if you are a business leader, there are disincentives to volunteerism and participation. And I personally have experienced that, where my intentions to volunteer or serve get questioned in the public forum. And like yourself, Ashley, I know that I work with integrity and I'm prepared for that. But many small businesses just don't have the time or bother or care. And they get done what they need to get done around systems and infrastructure like us around this table. And that's been happening for decades. So clearly, a lot of work needs to be done on that front. And I could share volumes of similar feedback, which I have with most of you. I do believe that it comes down to leadership at the municipalities, though, in committing to hearing all sides of a community. And now I've stepped off my chair role into advising, which I will stop. But if I'll just add some of my priorities for 2021 and then see if anyone else has. I just want to point out that diversity and inclusion, I think, are really important priorities in certainly the Blue Mountains and in the tourism context. And there's conflicts in relation to our growing diversity, both in terms of visitors and residents. And I think if that's not on everyone's desk as something to pay a lot of attention to, we're going to be really behind the eight ball. COVID adaptations still are the #1 priority, and everything from managing protocols around when a vaccine rolls and all of those sorts of things. It's going to really still drive the 2021 bus. From a tourism perspective, I think most of our tourism players in the region need to be preparing for when international and national travel opens up post-vaccine. And I actually think we've been the beneficiaries of a lot of regional growth, but very soon people will travel again. We saw that post-SARS, post-9/11. Once the travel system was proven to be safe, people internationally traveled in droves. So we may see yet another dip post-pandemic with people finally being able to travel abroad. So we need to be prepared for that. And kind of related to the discussion that Ashley brought up is, we are experiencing challenges from growth and conflict between business and residents in lots of communities, and everyone has a sort of a very personal definition of what the community means. And I believe that is a priority for ongoing discussion, certainly for us in our municipality, working more closely, consulting with the local community and engaging is a big priority. So that's from the Village Association perspective. Anyone else want to share 2021 priorities?
Sorry, Mr. Chair, if I could just pop in here. I just wanted to note to the community that we have lost quorum. The rest of the meeting is for information, but just want to let you know that.
Okay. I'll give one more opportunity for anyone who might want to share any 2021 priorities. Okay. Well, let's move on to the next agenda item, which I think is just any other business. Is there any other business that needs to be arisen? New. Okay. Next meeting dates, next agenda item, just to note that they're to be determined. So Savannah, will we hear from you as New Year dates are scheduled?
Yes, you'll probably hear right from Tara actually, but we'll look internally and find some dates, and we'll go back to economic development and tourism advisory.
Great. Excellent. All right. Well, I think we're at a point where we can adjourn the meeting. So we have a mover to adjourn. Rob, seconded by John. All right. Thanks, everyone. Great to see everyone.
Thank you.
Happy holidays,
Christmas.
everybody.